Alberta's provincial election will take place on May 29th, and today we have the privilege of speaking with Gwendoline Dirk, the NDP candidate for Brooks Medicine Hat. Gwendoline, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thank you.
So we were talking a little bit before we got started here about your career as an educator. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to jump into this provincial political game, or maybe nightmare for some people, depending on who you talk to?
Absolutely. We were chatting before. I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan, and there were very few options for women growing up in farming families to break away. And so I chose education, and so I taught for 33 years. Most of my career was in teaching in high schools, English, but the last 13 years of my career, I moved to the Medicine Hat College, where I taught in adult development. I taught English to adults coming back, and it was such a rewarding experience teaching there, because people who wanted a second chance, maybe, and to build a life for themselves. I had the privilege of teaching them and watching them graduate from their programs and become social workers or nurses or teachers or whatever. I ended up in this particular role because in 2020, because the UCP cut $700 million to post-secondary education, our college suffered drastically. We lost about $3 million of that, and my division was cut and closed down. At that point, I had a choice. I could go back to the public system, or I could retire. And I decided to leave the jobs for the younger generation. I had done my time, and I became very involved in the community as a volunteer and an advocate. I joined just about every club I could find, and I became a member of the Medicine Hat Police Commission, the Palace Triangle Health Advisory Council, Kiwanis, Rotary, Samus Immigration, etc. And when you do this kind of work, eventually you get called to try to build a better world. And I was called to run for the Alberta NDP because I feel like it most closely reflects the values that I was raised with, to give people opportunities to build the middle class. And I feel that's being lost under this particular government.
So thinking back to your time as being an educator at the college and having these adults come to learn more skills so they can get better jobs, and then kind of pairing that with the community helps that are there, like you were talking about the groups that you were part of, maybe talk a little bit about how important those community supports are to the community of Medicine Hat and Brooks.
The community supports are very important. However, I just feel like in the last little while, more and more people are having to access the community supports because of this affordability crisis. And I feel like in Alberta, with a province that we're just rolling in oil revenues, people right now are struggling more than they ever have struggled. It doesn't seem to add up. We are a very rich province, and so more should be done for people so they don't have to access supports. It's all that I feel. More opportunities should be given to people so they can have a good paying job, so they can make ends meet at the end of the month, so that they can afford to pay their bills. And I don't like that. I feel like the present government has made it more difficult by taking caps off of certain things like tuition. Students are struggling. Student loan rates have gone up. I heard something like 7 or 8% is what they're paying now, where it used to be very minuscule. Things like utilities and car insurance and rent, people are struggling. And so it doesn't seem to add up. And I just feel like fighting with Ottawa and blaming Ottawa isn't the answer. I think we have an Alberta-based solution right here. We can do better in this province.
Right. And certainly a rising tide, as they say, raises all boats. Now, thinking of this election, you're running against the former mayor of Brooks, as well as the premier of Alberta. So what do you see as a path forward to win a seat for the NDP in Brooks Medicine Hat?
Well, the path forward is to just be out there and talk with the different communities, the different groups of people, and listen. really listen to what their needs are. So I spend a lot of time both in Medicine Hat and Brooks, spend some time in the rural reaches of the riding, but this is a huge riding. So I can't get everywhere all the time. But I'm listening very intently to what the concerns are, and I'm hearing in Medicine Hat and Brooks, this not being able to find and access primary health care, emergency room waits, people having to wait days to get a blood, or sometimes a month to get a simple blood test. ERs overloaded. It's becoming a huge problem. I think we can do better. Our party has a wonderful plan for healthcare. I think you know about it, family health teams. It's a wave of the future. And we also have a very respectful relationship with healthcare providers. And so they will come back to the province. Right now, we have struggles with vacancies in our residencies. There's 20 still unfilled after the second round of CARMs. So it's scary. The other major issue that I'm really hearing, especially in Brooks, but Medicine Hat as well, is housing. There's such a lack of affordable housing in Brooks that I have gone through apartments that make me want to cry. There are families of 5, 6, 7 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment, paying horrendous amounts of rent. At the end of the month, there's nothing left for them if they can even make ends meet. This is a rich province. We can do so much better.
Yeah, that inflation just seems to impact every area of life. And with the, let's say, the demographics even of Brooks, there are so many people living in apartments and even families, like you say, coming together to share that space. And that is definitely not ideal, not what families are looking for. What are your thoughts maybe on how to deal with inflation as it's affecting food and utilities and housing?
Well, first of all, I know that our party wants to restore the caps that the UCP removed from tuition, from utilities. Utilities have gone through the roof in some areas where people are struggling. We also want to house 40,000 more Albertans. We want to put them into affordable housing because everyone deserves a safe place to live. And so if I become the MLA for Brooks Medicine Hat, I plan to advocate so hard for both Brooks and Medicine Hat to get a piece of that pie because we really need it here. And again, especially I've seen it in Brooks where it's just sad what is happening. They simply don't have enough houses to house all the people there.
Right. And now home ownership, of course, would be phenomenal for these families. But as you were saying, that there's just too much month left at the end of the money and people need to put their money together even for a down payment. Do you think that there's, in that affordable housing plan, there is something to enable even, well, whether they're newcomers or just young families who've grown up here in the province, do you think there's an opportunity for them through affordable housing to even own their own home?
I don't know if the affordable housing plan of the 40,000 people covers that particular part of it, but I do know that with better paying jobs all around, with more opportunities, with bringing inflation down and cost of living down in general, something needs to be done. We do plan to increase rent subsidies. So, and that's one of my primary goals in my time. Even though I grew up in a relatively poor family with 9 siblings, I was able to build a good life for myself. I feel like that is lost. People can barely make ends meet. You know, I started with nothing and now actually am doing very well. And so it's not for myself that I'm fighting so hard. I'm fighting for these struggling people. I want to see the Alberta that I came to know and love. And I feel like that's being lost. We need to rebuild the middle class because in the last 4 years, more people than ever have fallen below that and they no longer pay taxes. And so guess what? Even for the middle class, they need to wake up. If you want your taxes to go down, We need more people in the middle class to share that responsibility. And I don't feel this government is doing that. I feel like the NDP is the answer to build a resilient economy, to build more people, put more people in the middle class.
Right. Can you talk a little bit about the brighter future idea that the NDP has? I know, like on your Twitter and other candidates' Twitters, you have the hashtag A Better Future. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. When you have jobs, when you attract investment back to Alberta, when you attract healthcare providers back to Alberta, when you build an economy that's stable, that's resilient, that where we can actually help the oil industry as well to get to net carbon without reducing production. We want to get as much of our oil as we can to market. When we get pipelines in, like Rachel Notley managed to get in her last term, instead of fighting with Ottawa, then you build a better future for people when they can afford to pay their bills at the end of the month, afford to buy a house, when they have a good job that they can go to. Not when you spend all of your time simply fighting and making noise and threatening and doing Sovereignty Act and that sort of a thing. That's scaring away investment from Alberta. We need to attract investment, not scare it away.
Right. Now, circling back to the healthcare shortage of employees, I know that that's kind of broad across North America. I know that visiting some family, even back, in Michigan, back in 2006, they were, so that was private healthcare, of course, they were already bringing in nurse practitioners as a way to deal with their doctor shortage. Do you see an equitable opportunity for Alberta to recruit out of province health workers?
We not only want to recruit out of province, I absolutely think that we can recruit out of province if we rebuild a respectful relationship with healthcare providers. Right now, Alberta is the last place they want to come, and it will get worse in the future because we do not have primary care residencies filled. And so I say to people, if you think it's bad now, if Daniel Smith and the UCP win this election, it will get much worse. So absolutely, we will recruit people with our plan. We will also, here's the beauty of this that I have to tell you, is there is an example of a family health teams clinic in Taber that has been running successfully for 10 years. In 10 years, they managed to serve 40% more of residents, 40% more, and in 10 years, they saved $62.2 million. So the beauty of this plan is not only will it attract the healthcare providers back to our province where they don't want to be right now and are not coming back if the UCP wins, it will also save money, and it will also serve 1 million more Albertans will have access to primary care in 1 or 2 days where they live. That's our guarantee.
So is this kind of like, my wife and I used to live on the island in British Columbia, and one of the big things there in healthcare was those P3 relationships and ownership models. So is that kind of what these family clinics are?
I can't speak to that because I'm not familiar with the background context.
Oh,
But I
gotcha.
can tell you a little bit what the family clinics will be like. It'll cut down on administrative work. It will attract especially young doctors into Alberta because young doctors, young people in general, the millennials and after, do not have the same philosophy on work-life balance. They're much happier in their attitude. They don't work themselves to death like our generation did. They want to go home to families. They want to have vacation. They do not want to be businessmen. They do not want to have to be working 24/7. They want to practice medicine. So this will attract them to that. Bringing in other primary healthcare providers in a family team type of situation, it will take the load off of everyone. It's a family that works together with one patient, with a patient. And so if I can't see my doctor today because he's at home with his newborn baby or her newborn baby, then I see someone else on the team. Maybe it's just a prescription I need filled. I can see the nurse practitioner for that.
Right. Well, that sounds very innovative, and definitely we can't keep doing the same things and expecting different results. So thank you very much for being with us today, Gwendoline.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
That was great to have you on. That was Gwendoline Dirk. She is the NDP candidate for Brooks Medicine Hat, and she joined us today from her office in Medicine Hat. For all of us here at Bridge City News, thank you for watching. I'm Michael Clausen.